Apple doesn't care about you, nor does it care about any enthusiast, really, for that matter. It's certainly not anyone in the tech community. And the sooner you get that through your head, the better off you're going to be, for a lot of different reasons that we'll talk about. But if anyone ever needed an example that iPhone and Apple were really only concerned about the general consumer, most people that they're going after, you could see who their general customer is, then look at that iPhone 14 presentation. This is certainly a year where it feels like the iPhone 13s. It's certainly a year where I wouldn't recommend, if you have an iPhone 13, stick with it. It's probably going to be just fine. Now that they've sorted battery life out, there was nothing really wow factor about the iPhone 14. And all those people that said that at $399, the Pixel 6a was unacceptable and shouldn't exist in 2022 for not carrying a 60 hertz display, well, I hope you feel the same about the iPhone 14 rather, running now, going to come in at $799 for the base model, running a 60 hertz display. If it's like that for Google, it has to be like that for Apple. And I get a pass with that, because you can go back and see my Pixel 6a videos. I didn't care about the 60 hertz. I think it's a stupid spec. I think it's dumb. For most people, the Pixel 6a consumer, it doesn't matter. And that's what tips off who the Apple consumer is and where they make the majority of their money. Don't discount the amount of people that go into their carrier and they say, what kind of phone do you want? And they say, oh, I want an iPhone. And they say, well, which one? A white one. That's who it's for. So all those things that they upgrade and all the fancy stuff that they put in it, the way they make it fancy with whatever they do, that's who they're appealing to. To where when you pick up the latest iPhone, that's what you'll get. And a lot of those commercials, watch the NFL now this weekend, week 1. There's going to be a million iPhone 14 commercials. And they'll show off all the fancy stuff. But it's aimed at people who just want an iPhone. And that's good reason for that. The devices work. They are stable for the most part. I know some people have issues with iOS, and I get that. But think about what you're doing usually when you have those issues. The issues I've had with iOS, most people wouldn't even run into. And that's the point. They do the basics really well. They get the basics stable. They now have the battery life to where you could put it in anyone's hand, you could put it in your parents' hand, you could put it in your grandmother's hand, and you're going to be confident that they're going to have roughly the experience that they're looking for. And just like the SIM, the eSIM is going to be a gigantic thing on YouTube. Getting rid of the SIM tray on the iPhone 14 is going to be a huge deal. You're going to see a ton of videos on it. People are in outrage. Well, guess what? Most consumers that are going to be buying the iPhone 14 never switch their SIMs out. They're not enthusiasts. They're not people putting SIMs in different phones and carrying them around based on the day. They buy one phone, they make their payments, and 3 years later they're going to go to the store and say, hey, give me another one. That's it. So the SIM tray means nothing to them. Nothing to them. In fact, if anything, it's a way to lock people into their ecosystem. And, for all the criticism Tim Cook has gotten, and for this response that he gave, basically when talking about iMessage, well, buy your mother an iPhone. That's the most Steve Jobs thing he's said and done since he's been there. I kind of admired it. You can almost see Steve saying that. Well, you don't like the fact that iMessage doesn't work well with other platforms? Guess what? Buy an iPhone. I kind of like that. Listen, they know who they are. They know who they appeal to. This is what you get. Take it or leave it. No one says you have to buy it. You could go out in the wilderness and buy a Samsung. You could buy an Android device. Or you could come here, be part of our ecosystem, and buy an iPhone. Does it mean that enthusiasts, we have to agree with it? No. Of course not. We like SIM tray. I love a SIM tray in mine. I swap out between devices all the time. It's going to be annoying. But it's not for me. And I promise you, for the most part, it's not for you. If you're somebody who's going to get uppity about that. Let me tell you the other thing. The dynamic island. Look, that's a very Apple thing, right? Taking something that's perceived as a negative and turning it into a feature that they then crow about. And I get it. It's interesting. But at the same time, something had to be done. With iOS 16, they finally started to clean up their notifications a little bit, especially on the lock screen. It's a little less intolerable than notifications for the iPhone are stuck in 2007. Terrible. Been terrible for years. So if there was a way for them to use the notch, or now the pill, or the dynamic island, sorry, you can't say pills, the dynamic island at the top of the device, if there was a way for them to integrate that into the notification aspect of their device, into the multitasking, which was poor as well, and somehow make it a better experience between transitioning between apps, getting notifications about sports scores like you saw that. I personally think that's pretty cool. You know, I'm a Red Sox fan, so there's not a lot cool this year about the Red Sox scores, but that's neat if you get a sports score that's kind of saddling either side of the dynamic island. That's pretty neat. And the other notifications that you can interact with, whether it be media, whether it be Face ID when it pops up, nothing's more intrusive than Apple notifications. Terrible. So they needed to do something there. And if they turn it into a very Apple thing, turning a negative into a perceived positive on their end, well, then we're going to have to live with that. I think it's neat. I'm going to have one. And it might be something as simple as you just wanted the color purple on the iPhone 14 Pro, like Tech Odyssey. We wanted the purple. Listen, it's time to get some colors in the Pro models of these devices. So if we could settle for one color, I'm wearing the purple shirt. I want the purple iPhone. That's the one that we're going to be pre-ordering tomorrow. But you're going to be seeing a lot of videos on YouTube over the next few days, all up in arms about the 60 hertz, about the eSIM, about the dynamic island, about all the other things. The fact that the iPhone 14 really isn't that much of an upgrade. It's more of a 13S. Yeah, I agree with all of that. As an enthusiast and someone who follows this stuff and talks about stuff, I agree with all of that. But at the same time, I'm able to turn that around and understand why, in Apple's view, it doesn't matter. People are going to buy them anyway. They're a status symbol. They're easy to use for most people, for older customers, whatever it happens to be. Your friends have an iPhone, so you're going to get an iPhone, so why would they give up that advantage? I understand all of it. You don't have to like something in this world, but a lot of times you have to understand it and at least accept it. And that's what Apple really, especially with the iPhone 14, is forcing you to do. And in previous years, you knew you were in trouble iPhone-wise. I knew we were in trouble iPhone, I think it was 12, when they led the presentation with 5G. I was like, oh boy, if that's what they have to crow about, then we're really going to be having a trouble. And you know, when they loaded up that presentation and they spent an hour and a half on the Apple Watch and the Apple Watch Pro, which we may talk about in another video, you really knew you were in trouble with iPhone 14. Not going to be that big of an upgrade on performance. When they're comparing it in the graphs to the iPhone 11, then you know. And you know what? Maybe they don't need to do a whole heck of a lot. iPhone 13 is still really good. No issue there. So I understand why they don't need to upgrade perhaps that much. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But at the same time, they're still asking people to pony up a few dollars. So they need to put something in there. A little catch in there. You're going to see a lot of, like I said, you're watching football this weekend, you see a lot of advertisements for that dynamic island. You're going to get sick of it by the time the freaking thing comes out. If you've made it this far, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Until next time, have that Steve-licious day.